Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtadar Khan, your host, and today with me I have a very distinguished guest, a colleague, and an old friend, Dr. Khamarul Huda. Dr. Khamarul Huda has had a very interesting multi-format, I should say, or discipline career. He has been a scholar, he is a researcher, and he has been a diplomat, and now he also teaches in a naval academy. So he has exposure to regular academia. He taught at Boston College, right? Boston University or Boston College, and then he worked for the U.S. Institute of Peace, and now he is a Michael Paul Chair in International Affairs at the United States Naval Academy, and we are very proud to say that University of Delaware beat the Naval Academy last year in football. Uh, and he is the author of two books. His work is about conflict resolution and peace. So I have one book here called The Crescent and Dove, Peace and Conflict Resolution in Islam by Khamarul Huda. And there's another one which has just come out recently called Re-envisioning Peace Building and Conflict Resolution in Islam. So you could argue that Dr. Huda's research sort of merges not just international affairs, but also brings religion into international affairs. And if I'm not mistaken, it was in that capacity that you were a diplomat in the State Department working in religion and international affairs. So there are a couple of things I want to say that I have worked with Dr. Khamarul Huda in the past. Most recently, we did an ebook on Gaza. If you take a look, called The Dialogue on the War on Gaza, and he contributed an article in which he brought the principles from his book on conflict resolution as to how they could be implemented to bring about peace in Gaza. But most recently, he has written this article called "Can Pakistan Mediate the Iran War?" and in which he seems to be very optimistic about the potential of Pakistan to play an important role in mediation. And so that is what we are going to talk about with Dr. Khamar al-Huda. Is Pakistan a mediator or just a postman for the United States? So welcome to Conversations, Khamar.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khan. I'm so happy to be here and joining you with your wonderful channel.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. So my first question is very simple. In your article, this is in the National Interest. It is one of the more important policy journals in this country, along with Foreign Affairs and Foreign Policy. So my question to you is a very simple one. You seem to be very optimistic about Pakistan's capacity to be more than a postman, like just carrying messages between the Iranians and the Americans. You talk about Pakistan as being capable of playing the role of a mediator. And you actually describe the role as one who can find common ground and someone who can actually like you address one of Iran's most profoundest insecurities, which is, can we trust the Americans to abide by the agreements that they make? And so you suggest that Pakistan can actually convince the Iranians that there is possibility of making peace. What makes you feel so confident about Pakistan's capability to mediate, Qamar?
No, well, this is a fantastic question. Is that in the field of conflict studies, it's always the question of the mediator: what qualifies that actor? What qualifications does that state actor have? What is the track record that has? What is that person or group of people, organizations capable of doing to show? What are they promising? And if you look at all these different criteria, first, let's just take Pakistan. Has, of course, borders Iran, right, and borders Afghanistan. And I mentioned in my article that the first is internal pressures within Pakistan, with the economic pressures, the TTP, the Taliban for Pakistan has been attacking Pakistan inside Pakistan on the border. Pakistan's army has been inside Afghanistan doing military operations in the month of March and early March and February. And so that is creating some pressure. And the biggest concern is that the border, if this does spill over into Pakistan, the war with Iran, we are then seeing a greater instability, not just for Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, but potentially for India too. So the Pakistanis have found an interesting niche in this time, because if you look at the landscape of actors there, obviously the Gulf states can't really do much mediation because they're perceived by Iran as hosting military bases, and
Mhm.
they're seen as launching pads of the invasion, and then the attacks. The Iraq is not a possibility. China is not yet a possibility, and and India has been pushed to the side on many areas. So Pakistan has emerged as this state actor because its historical ties with Iran, historical ties with the Gulf states, and the way it's positioned itself since with the Trump administration so positively. It's changed diplomatic. It's actually been a diplomatic triumph, some are calling this year between Pakistan and U.S. Because before, with the Biden administration, we were basically diplomatically isolated in D.C. So it's positioned itself several times, and I think the test case was really 6 months ago within Gaza, the Gaza peace deal, and you kept seeing Pakistani Prime Minister excuse me, Shahbaz Sharif in D.C. Speaking with President Trump at the United Nations at UNGA, and then eventually appearing at Gaza peace deal in last October. And it's also very, also surprising because Pakistan and the Palestinians and the Pakistan and Gaza has been, why it's a passionate issue. They really have had very little to do with any resolutions there. But Prime Minister Sharif was one of three speakers at the Gaza deal. And Sharm el Sheikh, I believe. My point is this: is that Pakistan has slowly and gradually positioned itself as not just like a postman or the deal breaker, but as someone who's reliable on multiple levels. Clearly reliable for the Iranians, and clearly reliable for many of the Arab Gulf states, particularly maybe less for the UAE in the recent weeks. But the relationships are already strong within the Gulf states, particularly with the Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Um, so I think they've positioned themselves with the U.S., Gulf states, with Iran, and uniquely positioned that they can present, at least this is what we mean by mediator. They are not promising neutrality. What they're promising is to broker a framework of dialogue, of communicating, but not just interests, but where can we break down certain, mistrust, and everything's about mistrust as we stand today. So Pakistan is really just working these past, I guess, 9 days on dealing the mistrust and what the key issues are. And the reason I still say that they are the sole mediators at the moment, but I think they're leaving the door open, as I mentioned in my article, perhaps co-mediators with China, Turkey, and maybe Egypt.
So, I mean, this is the main point, one of the more important points you make in the article, that Pakistan's prospective mediation will first need to address Iran's diminished confidence, etc., which I
Mhm.
brought up recently. But I mean, if you recall, it was just less than 2 years ago that Pakistan and Iran bombed each other.
Mhm. Mhm.
So they were kind of fighting each other. The other interesting thing is that there's a debate going on the other side of the border in India about the lack of India's role in the conflict, and
Yes.
there's a lot of I use the word diplomacy envy going on in India, that Pakistan is now at the center, India is silent. So the opposition has been very critical. There have been
Yes.
several articles written about India's quote unquote strategic silence. I have also entered the debate and critique Shashi Tharoor, who is actually
Yes.
supporting the government's position on this. The one point that everybody's making in India is that given the civilizational relations that India has with Iran, and the comprehensive strategic partnership that India enjoys with the US, and the wonderful chemistry apparently that Modi has with Donald Trump, and of course India now standing with Israel, before the war started. So India has good relations with UAE, for example. UAE's MBZ was in India trying to discuss some kind of a defense agreement or
Yes.
cooperation. So India has great relations with UAE, with Israel, with Iran, with the United States. So the argument was that not only that, but even on the issue that matters the most to India, which is Kashmir, Iran has been quite supportive of India in international forums rather than Pakistan. So, given all of this, people in India are saying, why is India not playing this role? So, what makes you feel that Iran is going to be more trustful and confident of Pakistan in this negotiation, given that it has been closer to India than Pakistan in the past few years?
Yeah, I mean, all those points are very solid points. Um, and I think if I'm trying to follow the Iranian news, Iranian newscasters and newspapers, one of the things they really criticize India in the this last few weeks, even up to the war, and was that on the 28th when they attacked, Prime Minister Modi was in Israel 4 days beforehand
Yeah.
in Israel. And there's a lot of conspiracies how there was some that India will be doing, according to Iranian newspapers. India is co-conspiring, new in advanced. This fatherland, motherland business shows this connection of showing, if not intel support, and if not using other efforts to support this. And then when the Iranian boat was attacked, they came for military exercise with the Indian Navy, and then just after it was released, it was attacked, decimated, right? And the Sri Lankans helped them, save them. Again, adding to this conspiracy. I'm just saying, in the last 20 days, what the Iranian newspapers, the Iranian, especially in Iran, Tehran, Isfahan, are saying is that there is a group of Iranians saying that India is not as a confidant, close ally at this moment. It's turned on them because of the Israeli-U.S. relationship, and they should not be trusted. And the Charbahar port, the Charbahar has been going on for almost 4.5 years, has never really been successful. There's been on and off commitments, and so they're just saying, India is. I'm just talking about their criticism. I'm just to express what I've learned from them. So there's this stream of thinking within Iran saying that India is using the strategic autonomy to be on both sides, and in time of war you can't have both sides, and either you have a strong affinity and support, or you don't. So, as you know, Pakistan condemned the attacks, but Israeli-U.S. attacks, and against all the Gulf pressure and all these other pressures by President Trump, Pakistan said no, based on international law, based on sovereignty issues, based on these things, the principles of sovereignty of a nation state, they were violated, and this was expressed at the UN and other places. So, in many sense, Pakistan is trying to hold this principled position that state sovereignty cannot and should not be compromised, and so that's why I think they are under their leading horse, as they say in the horse race. India's sort of gradual isolation on this topic has to do with more or less of their own doing and their manufacturing of this position. And I don't think, even in my article, I bring up, Pakistan doesn't have just one chance, right? It's not either they succeed or fail and they're finished, right? And this sort of process, especially if they go with co-mediators with the big guns like China and Turkey on their side and Egypt, this process of mediation could go for a long time. But in every process, there's something called, and it's a term within the field, and I know you're familiar with. They're called spoilers, right? Right? People, and that they could be people within the process, right, who are part of the mediation, who say we are in it, but we're not really to slow it down. We want to spoil it. We want to delay it. We have our own personal agendas or something. And then there are external spoilers who are looking for the mediators to fall, and so maybe they can then slide in and do the mediation work. So, India then has that potential of having that hat of becoming mediator. So I don't think, and then there's a third option, if you ask me, and then I'm just sort of like an optimist. I mean, this could be a moment for India and Pakistan, because of South Asian stability, to really find some door in some way to say that there is mutual interest for Iran not to be stabilized. And maybe they could be co-mediators, and that's a suggestion that, of course, everyone says no. Indians and Pakistani say no.
Destabilized, not
Yeah, if Iran becomes progressively destabilized,
yeah,
yeah,
it'll undermine the region. There's no doubt
yeah,
about it.
this is, and so both Indian and Pakistani mediators should really come to think about maybe there could be a joint venture on this. And India should not wait on the sidelines until it really gets to a horrible situation where there's no point of return. So I think the door should be open for India's involvement, just to make sure it's stabilized, because this nexus between Iran and South Asia and the Gulf is very close now. It's everything's interconnected, as we all say it again, right? So
People don't know that for nearly 700 years, the
it
official language of India was Persian.
was Persian, and
Yes,
there's over 4 million Persian manuscripts in India.
yeah.
If you want to study anything during that period, you have to know Persian.
I agree with you. I agree with you that this is a win for Pakistan, no doubt. Even if Pakistan is not able to bring about peace and this war continues, the fact that everybody seems to be relying now on Pakistan, and especially
Mm,
the quadrilateral meeting in Islamabad where Saudi
right.
Arabia, Egypt, Turkey went. And at that meeting, all these ambassadors actually expressed their confidence in Pakistan being the mediator, which means Turkey passed on the torch to Pakistan, at least saying, you take the first shot and we'll see. And then when Isaac Dar went to Iran, there was all of this talk about that. Sorry, when he went to China, there was this talk that Iran is seeking a guarantor, and that guarantee, they want China to be involved in it somehow to make sure that the United States does not renege on its promises.
Yeah.
But immediately after that, China held this peace dialogue between Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Yeah.
And there, unfortunately, I was very disappointed with the timing of it. While I understand it's important, and while I understand that
Yeah.
China needs to stabilize this for its own economic interests, for CPEC, etc., what possibility of India cooperating with Pakistan, whatever remote chances were there, I think with a heightened role of China, suddenly I think that has diminished.
Yeah.
Because now it is not just about India working with Pakistan to stabilize the region. It'll have to be working with Pakistan and China, and India
And
could
China.
feel,
Yeah. Yeah.
could feel crowded. But I want to look at this. See, this is a typical case, like Sherlock Holmes would say, wheels within wheels,
Yeah.
that to try to solve the puzzle. So the wheels within wheels is the Abrahamic Accords, where UAE is aligned with Israel, and then you have these tensions between Saudi Arabia and UAE, and now
Mm,
a strategic defense agreement actually between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia.
yes.
Are you sure that all Gulf states are trusting Pakistan to be a fair mediator, or is United Arab Emirates, which is now having some kind of a tiff with regards to the money it had loaned to Pakistan, and there's some squabble going on about that? Is that unrelated, or is it an indication that there's far degree of uncertainty and even distrust
Yeah.
between UAE and Pakistan now, which could undermine Pakistan's role as a mediator?
No, that's a fantastic question. I think one question that's tied to that is there needs to examine the different Gulf reactions,
Mhm.
GCC reactions to this current war. And you see in the first week, especially with attacks on the bases and then on civilian infrastructure, they were quite united from UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, all the way down to Saudi and Qatar. But in the last 2 weeks, you've seen, and then we have information that they say MBS was calling President Trump to say, if you're doing this, do it and finish it as fast as possible, right?
Mhm.
This is what's in the news, New York Times, and then he's denied it and so forth. Whether all of these different reactions and close connections to the American diplomats are what's being revealed is true or not is another issue. But in the last week of 12 days, you see Qatar saying, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Qatar saying something different, which is, we think there's time to reevaluate the bases in our country.
Yeah.
Right? And the UAE is not doing that. KSA, Saudi Arabia, actually may be using their opening and you activating the base in Taif, right? Which is a problem because that's only 50 miles away from Mecca. And if there's any problems, people are suggesting that this could bleed into the holy city. So they are not moving away as Qatar is. Qatar is becoming more pragmatic along again their conflict resolution lens because they've been one of the in the international scene. They basically eclipsed the northern Scandinavian countries in mediation in the last 10 years,
Yeah,
hands down. They've been involved in almost every major mediation from Latin America, Africa, North Africa, Somalia, and I listed only 5 in my article. So Qatar, and I think Qatar will be a very strong ally for Pakistan on how to navigate this. Pakistan may be holding the wheel of the car of mediation, but in the same car, they will be heavily leaning with Qatar, with also guidance, of course, from Riyadh. Now, I think because there's this splits, and I've also, if you watch different Arab channels from Lebanon to Riyadh to everyone, there's even split amongst them on what they should do. Um, uh, it is incredible to see a rise of dissenting voices against monarchies, against the pro-American policies, and then there's ways to save those who said, we were quiet on the Iraqi invasion, we were quiet with Syria, we were quiet with Lebanon, quiet Libya, and now it's our turn, and now we don't know what to do. Why have we been sleeping? And so even amongst these Arab analysts on TV are saying, we need to evaluate this very sort of eyes closed and alliance with the bases, American bases. All to say this, that there's creeping of changes of perhaps incremental, except for Qatar, of how to move forward on cutting a deal with Iran, right? And I think Pakistan is seen as that because they once, especially with some GCC countries, they just have a very historic old relationship on many of these things, not only military stuff. And let's be honest, in Pakistan, the military is making a lot of these major decisions, right? And you have the civilians doing the hard work. But it's in consultation with the military.
So in this particular instance, I think Pakistan has an advantage over India because Pakistan can talk through 2 mouths. So Asim Munir can talk to the Americans and Shehbaz Sharif can condemn the Americans at the same time.
Sure.
So they seem to enjoy. I have this creepy feeling that Pakistan initially must have found itself in a pickle because they have an agreement with Saudi Arabia, mutual defense agreement. And if Saudi Arabia would have invoked it, then it would have involved Pakistan getting militarily aligned against Iran and aligned with Israel in that sense. So I think the only way they could get out of this mess was by playing the role of the mediator rather than looking at somebody who's on the sidelines. So Pakistan is probably telling the Saudis, we are more useful to you as someone that the Americans trust and the Iranians trust and you trust us. And so we are a trustful mediator rather than us sending some soldiers to stand defensively at American bases, right? But I'm wondering whether how does this alter Pakistan's situation? Like, it's not going to impact its relations with the Taliban. The Taliban seem to be uninterested in this war entirely, even though they are much closer to the conflict than even Pakistanis are. So does this help in bringing the domestic instability that you pointed to, as Pakistan plays an important role, at least in the Gulf? For Muslim countries, I mean, Indians are being skeptical and condescending about it, but all the other countries in the region are hopeful and are grateful that Pakistan has stepped forward. So you think that would help with Pakistan's domestic instability situation and its relations with Afghanistan?
I think there's 2 birds being, hit with one stone here. By helping Iran, or at least help the Gulf states and the U.S. Sort of de-escalate the tensions, or try to find some sort of roadmap towards de-escalation, and at least opening up dialogue for that. That's one stone that they can throw. But at the same time, they're using all of the sort of conglomeration of the Gulf states and putting pressure on the Taliban to say enough is enough. What Pakistan needs is more coordination and cooperation this time, and you need to rein in your TTP and the other 95 terrorist organizations that you have under your network. And this is not the time to activate it. And so there's been pressure. I'm not just talking about backdoor pressure. This is like overt, direct calls to Kabul from these capitals, GCC capitals, to say slow down and pull back, or there'll be a lot of trouble for you. In terms of trade and all the commercial investments they've had in the past 3 years. So there's two stones that have been thrown, and it's really helping in Pakistani's diplomacy. It's helping that stability you're speaking about. BLA, the Baluchistan Liberation Army, has not been silenced, and so that's still an issue in the province of Baluchistan, and then that's also still open. And so, but it's not causing dire instability in that country. So Pakistan has, in many ways, this one move, diplomatic move, to take the lead and to say we will take the lead in mediation is actually, depressing many of these hotspots as we speak.
If let's assume hypothetically that the American posture towards Pakistan is not cynical and it is more sincere, which means that they value the wisdom of the Pakistani leaders and the role that they can potentially play as mediators. So now the US, unfortunately, we are in a tricky position here with one of the pilots who was shot on the F-15E, the weapons officer. So the pilot was rescued. We haven't been able to identify where the weapons officer is. In principle, they would have ejected within seconds of each other. So they should have been within maybe a few miles of each other. That's where they would have landed. So we found one and we can't find another. There are rumors that the US is in communication with the officer, and they're trying to find a way to rescue him. So is Pakistan playing a role in trying to help the United States? If Pakistan can play a role in getting that pilot back, can you imagine what a coup it would be for Pakistan? But for Iran, capturing the pilot will be a major publicity bonanza, right? And it could be a confidence-building measure on the part of Iranians if they release that pilot and through Pakistani mediation. But I can also tell you that there's no English word right now to describe our president and the Israeli prime minister except Besharam. So they're quite capable of taking that pilot and then not responding in an equally magnanimous way. They would just go and bomb another bridge or something instantly after that, right?
Yeah.
So, but do you think Pakistan is playing or will play a role with regards to finding that pilot?
Pakistan's in a very interesting position to deliver whatever it can in different of these hot moments, whether it's the pilots issues, whether it's the issues on the Strait of Hormuz, issues with the commercial boats, and also negotiating for some allies to let them go through, whether it's for the actual negotiations in Islamabad and having shell diplomacy back and forth in Tehran. Despite being bombed, the residents of Pakistan in Tehran was bombed by Israel, and all these things, despite sort of not having the complete umbrella support from the U.S.-Israeli alliance, they're pushing through. But if this pilot is somewhere to be found or know of, or some knowledge, I think the Pakistanis, Iranians are probably working some sort of discussion, having some discussion on how to propose that this is in fair game. We should have this not be held as a hostage, right? And I think they're going to pull up something called the rules of war, right? Which has been in Washington D.C. has been a very questionable thing because someone and some cabinet members are saying there are no rules of this war. We're just going to carpet bomb this country back to Stone Age. And so, but the Iranians are still working under this rules of engagement of war and just war theory, and it's called Islamic war theory and everything. And so, if they find this pilot, they will use it as a carrot and stick.
Uh, I haven't told my audience that you have actually worked in the Gulf for some time, right? You have
Mm,
in some capacity or the other, especially training and with NGOs and peace and
yes,
conflict resolution. So you have access and probably have friends in the region.
yes, yes.
How are the Gulfies thinking about this whole thing? Because this whole security dilemma of the Gulf. We have American bases to be safe. Oh well, we are being attacked because we have American bases. So it has been turned upside down. This whole paradigm of security that they had bet
Yeah.
on for so long. So what are they thinking now? Are they going to double down on this or revisit?
Yeah, I think there's some questioning the bases, and sort of the heavy reliance of the bases was just enough that they had the Patriot missiles to use, and they had the F-15s, F-35s to defend the skies and so forth. But then when it was needed, they found out most of the Patriot missiles was used over there in Israel. No, mostly 90%. And so that's why things are still falling onto Abu Dhabi and Dubai and everywhere
Yeah.
else in Doha. And they just also bombed Aramco in Saudi Arabia. So I think the Gulf states are feeling, one, that this American military structure that they had wasn't as solid as they assumed, and as solid as they even presented to their own public, right? And so now this some are reevaluating, but I don't think some of my Gulf friends are saying we need to abandon it. They still think having the big brother American military system there is the best system to have, because they're not going to build up their military to the size of like India or Pakistan, right? This is just not going to happen. And they, even if they did, they're not going to be the fighters, right? They don't really want to fight and sacrifice their lives. And so getting, neighborly allies to fight for them or do the hard work and being paid for it, I think that's generally still the attitude. Unfortunately, they are still in they see themselves under siege. They see themselves a war with Iran. They thought there was a rapprochement with Iran, particularly with Saudi Arabia. China broke with that 4 years ago.
Mhm.
So all of this, they feel there's a whole mix of like policy is become upside down. We thought we had better relationship with Iran, and we never thought that they would bomb our civilian and military structures. But this, to the Iranians, they said this is survival, and I think this is the misreading of the Gulf states. They
You know,
don't understand how Iranians think about when it's survival, what they will do.
well, uh, I had an Indian ambassador, very distinguished Ambassador Talmiz Ahmed, who was India's ambassador to UAE and
Mhm.
Saudi Arabia. He was also based in Chicago at the consular service for some
Right.
years. So I asked him if there was any strategic community at all in the Gulf. Are there any debates or in foreign policy discussions, or it's just the king decides and that's it? So he disagreed with me. He says, yes, there is. I mean, clearly there's not entire freedom of speech there.
Yeah.
But there are think tanks and there are. So I
Yeah.
actually recently discovered there's something called Global Middle East Center for Global Affairs or something
Hmm.
in Doha. But uh, in order to be really have a serious debate about it, they really need to question whether their paradigm of relying on the U.S. was successful or not. A couple of years ago, I invited one of those home security people to come and install a motion detector and cameras outside my house.
Hmm.
And then he came and he told me he will install this. And then I looked at the bill; it was too much. So I told him I can't afford that. So let's forget it. So
Yeah.
on his way out, he said, you know what? Just get one motion detector and fake cameras.
Hmm.
So just have
Yeah.
one motion detector. If somebody comes near your house, the light goes on and he
Yes.
will see that there are cameras and he will run. He doesn't know that these cameras don't work, that I'm no
Sure.
internet. So I keep thinking of the US bases like that. And these are like cameras, which are not actually cameras. They're just there to
Yeah,
deter anybody. And they say, oh, we can't attack Qatar because it's the American base. We can't attack Bahrain because it's the
sure.
headquarters of the Fifth Fleet. And it turns out that they're more busy defending Israel than these countries.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I think there might even be some accounting issues as to we paid for the Patriot, what were they used for, right? So, do you think that that the United States position, whether it wins this war or not, it'll have a lesser role in the security of the Gulf, and maybe countries like Pakistan and Turkey will play a bigger role?
They will. I think there's a question of trust and reliability on military support. And I don't think there'll be a complete erasure of American military presence in the Gulf. I think there'll be a scaling back in one or two countries, perhaps, definitely by Qatar. And CENTCOM's base is in Doha. And so there's a major operation for CENTCOM is in Doha, but it also invites Iranian targeting. So they may scale back, but it won't be complete erasure. And I don't think the Gulf states will ever feel like they want to replace the American military with the Turks or the Pakistanis. I just think maybe they could add some here and there, and get more Pakistani Air Force folks or Turkish tanks folks, ground support, ground training, but they won't really be a replacement. So in that replacement theory, I think there's one major replacement, but in this replacement, it won't actually apply here. The Gulf states heavily their military buying and arming and securing their own army is so integrated with Pentagon. It's not that easy to separate.
Yeah, they're part of the U.S. ecosystem, right? The defense
Yeah,
ecosystem. They can't get out. It's like saying that,
yeah.
oh my God, if I shift out of my Apple laptop, I'll have to get rid of the iPad and the
Yeah, yeah.
and the
Maybe. So,
phone.
and then and almost every major military convention, whether it be aviation or naval or weaponry or technology and security, the Gulf is always heavily there and sponsoring and buying the latest tech from Lockheed and use and so forth. So the business side and the military side, I think, is very strong and integrated. And to detach that because of these major bumps is too fast, right? There has to be multiple things. These monarchies may have to fall before they even do that, but I don't see that happening.
It'll be a remiss. This is my last question. Do you think that this war is going to have a decisive effect on the midterm elections coming in November?
There's some school of thought that's saying, I think it was in today's New York Times that said that the communications from Pentagon and White House on the number of casualties and American deaths is far less reported than the accuracy is, and what is accurate in the real world. And so, if these numbers do come out, where there are more Americans and there's more pilots missing or taken as hostages or whatever the situation, so it becomes a growing embarrassment for the administration. Then the midterms is clearly going to, as one president, they will be shellacked, right? There will be completely a change of many hands. I think some are already saying that it's going to be an overwhelming like tsunami. But if this war does not slow down and does not de-escalate, and there's no delivery of some sort of ceasefire, and this goes into October and November, and then we see more and more casualties, and the clarity of the war and the mission is still unclear for the average American, then it's going to be a problem for the elections. Definitely.
You brought it up, so I have to add a supplementary question.
Sure.
Do you think that the U.S. is underreporting its deaths and casualties? I mean, how could you, if look, if I had a kid or a brother in this battle, I would be in touch with them every day, right?
Yeah.
And so if my brother or my uncle or whatever is not responding to me, I'm going to get I'm going to go berserk, right? Why hasn't he responded? It's 48 hours. So how can the US get away by not reporting?
It's very important question because there used to be an office that handled all of this within the OSD Office's Secretary of Defense
Mhm.
that handled casualties and communications to families and communications to different battalions and so forth. And that office is just almost nil, not communicating. And so that's why I'm just deferring to the New York Times because they think the numbers are underreported. And so if this comes out as a bigger story, I think either you are GOP or Democrat, you should be infuriated that Americans are dying and it wasn't really disclosed. And there's all these other things that are distracting. Pam Bondi is gone, and she's Noam is gone. Someone's in. So there's all these like rotations of different cabinet members, which is causing a distraction too, or maybe a purposeful distraction.
I think that the war was to distract from the Epstein files, and now Pam Bondi and all of it is to distract from the war, the debacle, creating a domestic crisis. As far as it is possible that they are lying not about the deaths, but they're lying about those who have been injured, about the extent of their injuries. So 300 plus who have been injured, like the 12 who were injured in Saudi Arabia, right, when the Iranians hit them, 2 have been injured very, very seriously. So of the 300 plus, it's quite possible that 10 or 12 are very seriously injured, and that is being kept under wraps. So the families know that their kids are injured. But I think if they hid the fact that more Americans had died, I think they will be wiped out in November. I mean, Republican or Democrat, they're not going to take this nonsense from them. So, Professor Kamarul Huda, thank you very much for joining me in conversations. And I'm sure my viewers have learned a lot from you. Please go and read his article in the National Interest. It's an important publication. And also look out for his books if you're interested in conflict and peace building. Thank you, Kamar.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khan. Good talking to you.